Okay, I'm back with Julie Jenkins, and we've learned so much from Julie about what lives in caves. New words for me. I hope it's some new words for you too. But now what we're going to do is try to pull that together and look at how do all these creatures that live down in caves, how do they work together to create a food pyramid?
Well, Kathy, if we started at the very lowest level of what is in that cave that's a food source, what we would start with, and we have some little building blocks here, are bacteria and fungus.
Bacteria and fungus. That's the foundation in a cave.
This is it. And these things at the very sort of low end of the cave are the food sources for the next level in the pyramid, which are the troglobites that we talked about earlier, the critters that live in the very back of the cave where there's no light, so there's no plant growth, there's nothing there for them to eat unless it's been brought in somehow. And what we find is that the bacteria even need, in order to grow, those bacteria need a food source as well. And that food source is typically debris, leaves and things like that that have washed in. And as they sit in the back recesses of the cave and begin to rot, then the bacteria grows on those, and the molds and the funguses, because they don't need light.
Well, I have to ask you about this one. I mean, that looks like a stalactite to me. That doesn't look like a fungus.
This is a fairly recent find.
Yeah, let's hold it.
This is called snotite.
Snotite?
Snotite. It's a gooey, very recently found bacteria.
I wonder if Bubba's found any of that today.
I don't think Bubba would like snottites myself. I think Bubba's a bug eater.
Oh, okay.
We need to be a little higher up the food chain. So here we have the bacteria at the kind of at the low end of things. And then we have the fellows that like to eat those bacteria. And we have little smaller sort of crustacean type things, and little tiny shrimp and things called amphipods. And they're just strange looking little creatures that you wouldn't even notice normally.
And so even our little pill bug looking guy.
And even our little pill bug looking guy. So as we build on this pyramid then, each lowest level is actually eaten by the level above it.
Oh.
So the ecosystem continues this way.
So these,
the bacteria being eaten by the troglobites perhaps being eaten by the next level up.
Our salamanders.
You've got some cave crayfish, and you just have cave fish, and they would be eating that. And then they, in turn, the salamander may be eaten by one of those troglazines, one of those surface guests that just comes in to visit the cave. The thing here, though, is what I get concerned about is what happens if the food chain changes. How does that affect all that life in the cave? And if you were to do something as simple as remove some of the bacteria from our cave food source, we literally topple that food chain. And then the troglobites don't have food to eat. And the troglobites, as we have seen, become our most specialized cave animals. They're the ones that can't leave, and they solely depend on the food that's either brought in by things like the troglazines or the bacteria that we saw that grows on some of the debris in the cave. So the whole food network is so dependent on each level. And they're all to continue.
So they're all dependent on each other.
Absolutely.
And it's its own little world, its own ecosystem down here.
Completely its own world.
And it's very fragile, too.
It is very fragile. And we see a lot of things that we humans do that can disrupt the entire food web.
Well, obviously we've got a lot of food for thought, no pun intended, but there's a lot for us to think about and a lot to do to protect these caves. And now, back to Bubba.